evening, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Conservative Corner. I'm Elliott Margolis, and I'm here with my co-host, Gail Burke. And unlike previous shows, I'm going to let her talk first. So, Gail, but just give me some time.
I'll do my best. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for watching. We're a week out from the election. We see all kinds of shenanigans going on by the Democrats, especially when it comes to voting. We know that many times states do not regularly purge their voter rolls. And so I think the Republicans this time really made an effort to try and make sure that it happened, because in several years' time, people die, people move away, illegals now have an opportunity to vote.
So don't dead people.
That's what I just said.
Oh, okay. My hearing's a little off, but I...
Okay. And what has happened, especially in places like Texas, they removed 6,500 non-citizens from voter rolls over the last 3 years. Non-citizens. Keep that in mind. 1,930 had a history of voting, so they did vote. Virginia moved 6,303 non-citizens amid fraud allegations. And what happened to Governor Youngkin in Virginia, as a reward for following the law, the Department of Justice under Biden-Harris has now slapped him with a lawsuit.
Well, wait a minute. It's the Department of Injustice, isn't it?
Good one. I like that.
Thank you.
Sure is.
Once in a while,
You come up with something good. The problem with the DOJ's claim, Virginia has been routinely removing ineligible voters from its rolls since 2006 without any issues. Such removal is routine in this state and ongoing all year long. Not a systematic change in the 90 days before an election, which is the excuse that the DOJ is using to prevent the rolls from being cleaned up. This is definitely politically motivated, politically trying to change how the rules are. This is what happened during COVID when the rules all changed. And in that awful 2020 election, we know what happened there. I think that, excuse me.
well, while you're drinking, and that is water, by the way. It's not vodka. It's water. But anyhow, do you know that the Biden-Harris administration is suing a number of states because they are requiring people show an ID before they vote? Can you imagine that? It's like saying, please, come illegally, come vote. I don't care if you're on the registration or not. We need all the votes we can get, so let's cheat to get in. That's exactly what the Democrats are doing, and it's up to you to make sure that doesn't happen. You've got to go vote, and you don't want to vote for the cheaters on the Democratic Party. That's what they're trying to do. Harris has made it very clear she's desperate. She's got to have all these quote-unquote celebrities talking for her because she can't talk for herself. She comes up with these word salads which say nothing, and if you've noticed, she has never, and I mean never, answered a single question that was asked for her.
Well, I think the latest attempt at trying to win the election, started out with Hillary Clinton making comments about the Madison Square Garden rally that Trump had over the weekend. And by reminding everybody that in 1939, the Nazis held a convention or a rally in Madison Square Garden. Well, what Hillary Clinton thinks that we are too stupid to remember is that the Democrat Party has held conventions in Madison Square Garden. There was one in 1968, and there was one where Bill Clinton was nominated as the candidate for the Democrat Party. So it's kind of ironic.
But I have to tell you, it's incredibly offensive.
Yes, it is.
To compare Trump to a Nazi. First of all, do you know who the Nazis were? Do you know what the Nazis did? Do you know what Hitler did? Give me one comparison of Trump being a Nazi or being like Hitler. It doesn't make sense. But see, that again, what the Democrats are trying to do is scare you into voting for Kamala. But let me ask you a question. 2017 to 2021, the 4 years that Trump was in office, okay? What makes you think he was a Hitler?
Nothing.
Okay?
Nothing
All
he ever
Trump did in his 4 years in office was fix the economy, make us energy independent, and give more money to black colleges than all the other presidents combined, and continues to do so.
And he did something that other presidents have tried and couldn't do. He moved the capital,
The embassy,
to
and
Jerusalem.
recognized Jerusalem as the capital.
That's right.
He's the best friend Israel ever had.
Exactly.
And the Democrats are trying to call him anti-Semitic. I'll tell you who's anti-Semitic. It's the Democrats. Look at the squad, anti-Semitic. You look at the attitude of so many Democrats about this war in the Middle East. They're anti-Semitic. But what the Democrats seem to be doing is saying everything we are is wrong, but we're going to blame it on the Republicans.
That's exactly what they do. Look at the demonstrations at the colleges by the college kids and others. And they're frightening and beating up on Jewish students. Jewish students are afraid to go to class. And because nothing is done about it.
It's Kamala Harris, who was one of the leaders in the defund the police movement. Yes. It's Kamala Harris who raised money for bail for people who destroyed buildings in Minneapolis. The other thing that's interesting to remember, Gail, the Washington Post, the New York Times, the Minneapolis whatever it is, the LA Times, none of them have endorsed the Democrats.
Isn't that amazing? Because they've, for many, many years, that's what they have done.
It's what they've always done. Kamala is from California. The Los Angeles Times did not endorse her.
No.
Okay? Walz is from Minneapolis. That newspaper did not endorse him.
Yeah.
The Washington Post did not endorse them.
The Washington Post.
What does that tell you? Think about it.
Well, while you're thinking about that, think about Kamala's choice for vice president, Tim Walz. Of all the candidates that she could have chosen, she chose him. Why? Because they think alike. Another reason may be because he was the only one that would not outshine her, and she has to be the one to...
You don't think that Tampon Tim outshines her?
maybe in some respects he does, as far as parents are concerned. They're livid about that. He's also a self-proclaimed socialist, having done business or at least traveled and brought students to China for many years. When
Allegedly
he was a
had an
teacher.
affair with a Chinese woman.
Really?
Yeah. Allegedly.
Okay. And this is the guy that accuses J.D. Vance of being weird. Have you ever watched Tim Walz at a rally, jumping up and down, waving his arms? And I mean, he looks like a clown.
Also, Waltz is a self-proclaimed knucklehead.
That's true. He calls himself a knucklehead, which I think many people tend to agree. And this is the guy who, if something should happen and they win, and something should happen to Harris, he could be the President of the United States. That's a chilling thought. So we have to dig deeper into the backgrounds of the people that are running. We all know about Trump and what he has done and what he's capable of and all the good things he did while he was president. J.D. Vance has been in the Senate for 2 years. He's an up-and-comer, very well educated. He was in the military, and he came from a very, very poor background in Appalachia and has given his grandmother and his mother in particular credit for coming through her drug years and succeeding. I mean, he's written a book that was turned into a movie by Hollywood. So he's a very accomplished fellow for even his young years, and very articulate. And he has shown that he can handle himself with the unfriendly press that goes after him. He's not afraid to face them and speak to them, much like Trump. Trump is everywhere these last few months. I mean,
I got a kick out of the fact that Carmela said Trump was getting kind of tired. You know?
Well, it takes her 2 days to prep for a
Yeah.
20-minute interview with Fox News.
I mean, that was funny that Trump is tired.
Yeah, he's tired. He's like the
but I have a
Energizer
question
Bunny.
for you. Okay, Trump was president for 4 years, and all these scare tactics that the Democrats are telling you about Trump, none of them, zero, happened while he was president for those 4 years. Now, what did happen in those 4 years as president? We became energy independent. We're not now. Now, Biden-Harris stopped it, the drilling and everything for energy independence, and we're buying oil from Venezuela. Dirty oil. Dirty oil. We're buying oil from Iran. What are they doing with the money? They're making bombs to kill Israelis.
Supporting Hamas, yeah.
Yeah, to support Hamas and Hezbollah. We're buying oil from Russia. What's Russia doing with the money? They've invaded Ukraine.
Yeah.
You've got to look at the entire picture here. We were at peace with Trump as president. Now, why? Maybe it's because Putin and some of the other leaders were afraid of what Trump might do. That's a good thing.
That's right.
That's what you call peace through power. Okay? Right now we have war through weakness. 2 wars going on under Biden-Harris. Okay? We had a war with, what's his name, Obama. You notice that, you know, Putin went into Crimea when Obama was president. Putin went into Ukraine when Biden is president. Nobody went anywhere when Trump was president.
Yeah.
Makes a difference who your president is. Makes a difference who your leader is. Who's the strong leader? Who gets things done?
Who knows how to lead? As we've seen with Harris on the border, she was given the job of fixing the border. 4 years later, she's blaming Congress for not being able to do anything on the border. That is such a lie. When Biden-Harris came into the presidency, the first thing they did was to cancel all the things that Trump had done to ensure that the border was not porous. They canceled every single one of them. And now, 4 years later, they're trying to blame Congress for not acting. It's also a lie because Congress did pass a bill which the Democrats would not, in the Senate, would not pass. And that bill is still lingering somewhere. We don't know where it is at this point, but they've ignored it. And as a result, we have over 300,000 children, migrant children, that came into this country, some without parents, and they came in and they disappeared. Nobody knows where these children are. We have a pretty good idea that a lot of them went into
there's been a lot of sex
trafficking.
trafficking
Yes,
as well.
Yes, and selling children. I mean, how horrible is that? In the meantime, the border remains open, and Biden and Harris tried to pass a bill that supposedly would fix the border. It had almost nothing to do with the border.
No, that bill was an inflationary disaster.
Yeah.
And the reason why the Republicans voted it down was because it had nothing to do with the border and everything to do with helping illegals come into the country on your nickel. Or actually, it's more than a nickel now. It's probably more like $50 million. I mean, how many of you out there watching this show can afford a $500 a night hotel and then have free meals, free cell phone, and
Credit
everything else
cards.
that they get?
Yep.
That's what we're giving the illegals. Now, Kamala is a lawyer. What part of illegal doesn't she understand?
It's the way the Democrat Party thinks. They just have a totally different view of the way things should be and the way things really are. They refuse to see the immigrants coming, the illegals coming across the border. They refuse to see that some of them are committing crimes. They refuse to acknowledge that there are gangs, MS-13, the gang from Venezuela, that are robbing, beating up on people. Today's streets are not safe in many communities because of the policies of this administration. And as Harris has said very often, she's always the last one in the room. So she means that she and Joe are the ones who are making the decision.
Right. She was always the last one in the room.
While at the same time, we could see that Biden was not capable of making decisions. We saw him mentally deteriorating in front of our eyes, and yet Harris said nothing. She claimed that he was he was still very quick. He has a better way of doing what needs to be done, and he was as sharp as he ever was. This is what she told us for the past 2 years.
And she also said, in spite of the inflation, in spite of all the illegals coming in, there isn't a decision that they made that she regrets or that she doesn't stand behind. Not a single decision.
Well, she was
Okay,
asked, what
but-
changes would you make? And she said, well, I can't think of any.
Yeah. Meanwhile, I'd like to just switch things for a little bit here.
Okay.
Because we're also going to be electing a state senator and a
Yes.
state representative.
Yep.
Now, keep in mind, Joan Lovely, our state senator, was invited to be on our show, declined. Jerry Paracella was invited to be on our show and declined. Why do you think that is? Okay, they like to go on shows where you ask them a question, they give you an answer, and then there's no follow-ups. Well, Gail and I have this thing. We follow up with questions. We ask them to defend what they do, why they do it. That's why they don't want to come on the show, because both of them are told by their leadership, this is how you're going to vote, and they don't have to think. They don't have to understand. They just they do what they're told. They're not representing you.
But we did have a candidate come on our show, Damien Anketel, who was running against Joan Lovely.
Yeah, and we had Ty Vitale running
Vitale
against Jerry Paracella.
That's right. So these are two candidates that you really should pay attention to. You can look up their records. They're very articulate people, and they're just tired, like many of us are, of this one-party state that just, they vote in tandem. They're like a bunch of lemmings. They vote this way, they all vote that way. You want to vote this way, they all vote that way. You know, they just can't think for themselves because they're so glued to the Democrat Party. We need to make some changes, and hopefully some changes will come, maybe not to Massachusetts this year, but to the country. And we need...
We'd like to have a good start.
Yes. Yep.
Okay?
Yep.
We need to make our politicians responsible for their actions. Okay? We need to make them realize that it's you they're representing and not their party.
Well, and that applies to the Senate as well. We have Elizabeth, and we have Markey. Markey, who is supposedly from Massachusetts, hasn't lived in Massachusetts for decades. He owns a home in Malden, but he doesn't live there.
And Elizabeth Warren, number one, she's anti-Semitic.
Yeah.
You take a look at her voting record, you'll see. Number two, this is what's really interesting to me. She's complaining about the cost of education, and yet she taught one course at Harvard and made almost $300,000 for teaching one course.
Yeah.
She's the reason, or one of the reasons, why it's so expensive to go to college. But you know, the whole concept of paying down the student debt, you know what that does? That increases the cost. Because if people know that they're going to get it for free and the government's going to pay for it, the schools are going to say, oh, what the heck, we might as well increase the price because the government's going to pay for it. Your nickel. That's Democratic policy. It's your nickel. You want to make some changes. You want to put some money back in your pocket. Don't forget, if you're a waiter or waitress, no taxes on tips. Not bad.
Not bad.
Overtime, no taxes on overtime.
This is under Trump. These are his
That's
proposals.
under Trump. But under the Democratic rule, Democrats think that they're a lot smarter than you, and they know how to spend your money better than you do.
Well, Carmella wants price controls on food. Now, the food industry operates on a very slim margin. When she's talking about price controls on food, it's ludicrous. I mean, you just can't do that. The problem with the price of food today is that wages have not kept up with inflation, and that's where we're losing out. I mean, you can't go to the grocery store today for a family of even two and pay less than $100, and that's including, you don't even get any meat.
Do you know what the key reason why inflation was so high? I'll tell you. When Biden took office, day one, he stopped all oil production in this country, okay? That means we start importing oil. What happens? We're paying more money. Now, you saw what happened to the price of gas from about $1.80 to almost $4, right? Well, everything that's in every single store in this country is brought to you via truck. Well, if it's brought to you via truck, trucks use gas. Guess what? If the gas goes up, the price goes up. That was the cause of inflation for everything. When a supermarket's prices go up, they have to go up. But, you know, Carmela doesn't say $600-700 an hour for a lawyer is price gouging, but an extra 50 cents for a gallon of milk, that's price gouging. You know, it doesn't make sense. You need to think about what's really happening and realize that it's Democratic policy, whether it's the state or the federal government. It's Democratic policy that's costing you money. And I have one question. How is it that anybody who gets into Congress all of a sudden becomes a multimillionaire? They're taking your money and they're making money for themselves and making you poorer. Think about it.
Absolutely. And we do not want to live under government mandates. We have freedoms in this country that have been taken away from us. They're trying to take away gas turbine cars. They want us to drive electric cars. Well, how come that Secretary Buttigieg, Secretary of Transportation, that we've spent $7.5 billion, to produce 7 or 8 EV charging stations so far. Think of that, 7 or 8 throughout the country. This is what we're looking at under a Harris administration. In closing, I would like to say that we've been through a tumultuous 4 years, whether it was COVID and the mandates and the masks and the shots. Government employed people were mandated to take shots or they would be fired, and they were. Military were forced to take these shots, even though they had not done much vetting on them. And as it turned out, the shots did not prevent you from getting COVID. They lied to us about the origins of COVID. And we're going to continue to see more of this if we keep the present administration in office. So I urge all of you, if you have not voted yet, you can still early vote, or you can wait till Election Day. Vote for the changes that we need, not the Democrat changes, but the Republican changes from the top down, for President Donald Trump.
Say goodnight.
For Vice President J.D. Vance. And with that, at my partner's urging here, I will say goodnight, and please watch for our upcoming shows. Thank you for watching.